Welcome back to another episode of Get Real with Kacey Kasem. It's the podcast that takes a look behind the scenes of the fantasy football industry through interviews with some of the best in the business. On this episode, I was joined by Garret Price of Dynasty Nerds. We chatted about all kinds of things, including how he gets to talk about football for a living, being around football his entire life, the support his family has given him, participating in live drafts, putting out fantasy content for the first time, the movie Draft Day, and a ton more. Make sure to follow Garret on Twitter at Dynasty Price. You can follow me at the Kacey Kasem and the podcast at GetReal_pod. You can find my content with Rotoballer, Fantasy Six Pack, and South Harmon Fantasy Football. And check out SundayDreamersClub.com for some awesome fantasy football inspired t-shirts and sweatshirts. This podcast is a proud member of the DAP Network. And now, here's my conversation with Garret Price on Get Real with Kacey Kasem. Not everybody knows everything about you. I don't even know everything about you, obviously. So we're excited to have you.
I forget plenty of things. Yeah, I forget plenty of things about me all the time. So,
well, we'll get started talking more about you. Maybe you'll remember everything as we go. But yes, I have Garret Price with me, and I'm excited because Dynasty Nerds is one of my favorite websites. Just wanted you to know that. I had Rich on the show before and like immediately went afterwards and, got so I could get all, or whatever. So I could get all the good inside stuff, your app
sure.
And everything. Super dope. So I just want to let you know that.
Thank you so much. We're very proud of it. We're very excited about how the site and the app and all the extra tools and all that have come together. It's been a lot of time and a lot of effort, but we're happy with the result.
Yeah, and I'm happy with it as a consumer. I am top. It's top notch, guys. Go check out the app. But yeah, Garret, we're gonna actually just get started talking about when you were growing up in sports. Like, how was your relationship with sports? Did you play sports, watch sports, or how did that go?
Yeah, I was a sports junkie very, very early on. I would be outside playing in the yard and I would be playing football and it would just be me. I had a younger sister, so it was just me. And I would literally be simulating an entire game in my head. So I would throw it, then I would catch it, then I would tackle myself, and then I would get back up and get to the line of scrimmage. Like I did the whole 9 yards from early on. Baseball, basketball, like whatever it was, I wanted to get involved. I wanted to play soccer, track. There was a season in 8th grade where I did travel basketball, track, and baseball all in the spring, all at the same time. And my mom was literally like, never again. This was a nightmare. So please do not ever do this again to me. So I always loved sports, but it was interesting. There were two things that had I known about fantasy sports at the time as a kid, it probably would have been a very obvious thing that, oh, this is probably a path you're going to pursue, whether it's professionally or just for enjoyment's sake. But there were two things that I did that was kind of weird as a kid. One, I would get my baseball cards, basketball cards, football cards, whatever they were, and I would do fake drafts with those players. And then I would lay them all out, and then I would like create stats for how they did against each other. And I would like make these notebooks full of fake stats that I just came up with on how guys did against each other. And then I'd like run the math and like, oh man, Kobe, you average 47 points a game. That's crazy. Like, obviously they were very unrealistic stats apparently. So that was part of it. And then it's perfect timing because the new NCAA football game is about to come out. And growing up, I played that all the time. And I got to a point where I stopped playing the actual games. I did not play the games anymore. I would simply just recruit in the off season and then do all of like the management stuff to see how good I could make my team without me interfering in the actual game. So yeah, I loved sports from early on, but even in that, the nerdy side of it, I love too.
I love hearing those stories about growing up and being involved with the video game aspect of it all in sports, because a lot of people come on here and they're like, yeah, Madden, this, that, and the other, or like you said, NCAA basketball, like all this stuff, 2K, everything. People are just like, so I see a nice common thread between a lot of the guests, just with the
Yeah,
video game background, so that's cool. Um,
absolutely.
so when it came to playing sports, like, what was your favorite sport to play, and what position did you play in that sport?
It was always football. Football was always my favorite. There was a time where basketball rivaled it, but it was because I was that kid that hit puberty in like the end of fourth grade, beginning of fifth grade. So I had like the dirt stash and stuff. And so I like in fifth grade, I was 6 foot tall. I am still 6 foot tall. So I did not grow a single inch after that. So I was just so much bigger than everybody else. So basketball playing like center and power forward was very easy for me just because of my height. But it was always football though. Football, I loved the physical aspect of it. Even playing, in high school, I moved around a lot early on. I had the opportunity to letter 4 years and ended up playing in college a little bit as well. But I started off as a linebacker and a running back. And then I became a nose guard and a tight end. And then I became we ran this like 5-3 or sorry, this 3-5 system where we had 5 linebackers. And so I played like this outside backer. And then by my senior year, I was all the way back to being a middle linebacker and a running back once again, just where I started. So I was kind of all over the place, but linebacker was always my favorite, even though scoring touchdowns was fun. I enjoyed scoring touchdowns, but like a big sack on the quarterback or a big play, like stuffing a run on the goal line, like that was always so much more satisfying for me than any big touchdown.
And did you have any favorite players when you were growing up?
Oh yeah. Uh probably Brian Urlacher was one of my favorite just because of the position he played, the position I played. But then when I got a little bit older, now this would have been while I was in college. We had the Peyton Hillis season. And as a Browns fan and as a guy that played very similar, like even when I played offense, I played very similar. Hey, I'm going to get from A to B. If I have to run over you, through you, I don't care. I'm getting from A to B. And that was like the style I played with. So it was a very similar style that Peyton Hillis had. So I always enjoyed him as well.
Yeah, that's a good choice. That's a good choice. Being a Browns fan, are you from the area, or how did you become a Browns fan?
Yes, I am a Northeast Ohio guy. Grew up in Northeast Ohio, lived here basically all my life. I guess technically now I'm more central Ohio. I'm not far from Columbus, Ohio. But there were 2 years that I lived in Oklahoma. But other than that, I've been in Ohio all my life. And yeah, my dad was a very loyal sports fan. So you rooted for the teams in your area, and there were no exceptions to that. And so overall, I embraced that, except for there was a part of my childhood where the Browns weren't a thing. They were gone. They were missing between
Yeah.
94 and 98 there. And so they came back in 1999. But during that time, one of my best friends was a Steelers fan. And so I adopted the Browns' largest rival at the time, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And my mom even bought me a coat, and my dad was so mad. He was so mad that my mom bought me a Steelers coat. But eventually, once the Browns came back, I got the Tim Couch jersey. I remember getting the magazine with Achilles Smith and Tim Couch on the cover. And then they had the big Browns dog fan that was like cheering in the background. And yeah, I became a diehard once they came back in 99. And I've loved them ever since through some very, very painful times.
Yes. It's okay. It'll be your year some year. I promise. I
Some
promise.
year.
So,
Thanks.
playing college football, how was that experience for you?
It was really cool. It was a really neat experience. So I played at a Division II school in Canton, Ohio, called Malone University, which we have. Unfortunately, the program is no more. They ended up shutting down the football program there. But the last pioneer is what we call him, because he was in the final class before they shut down. Is Ashton Doolin, who plays for the Indianapolis Colts, and great special teams guy. Doesn't do as much on offense, but a great special teams player. So we always refer to him as the last pioneer, because we were the Malone Pioneers. But yeah, playing there was really cool. We played at what was Fawcett Stadium. Or now I can't even think of what it's called now. but it's the Hall of Fame game where they play the Hall of Fame game every year. That's the stadium that I got to play in, which on the surface was super cool because I'm like, oh man, all the NFL players that played on this field, like this is so cool. But it's less cool on Saturday morning when you have this massive, massive stadium with all of these people there, and you have like 1,000 people that are actually there. Like it seats 30,000 or whatever, and you have 1,000 people there. So it looks very empty and very depressing when we actually played our games. But yeah, it was a really cool experience. For me, the biggest transition was the speed of the game. Like strength was never an issue. Like I was always good, even as a true freshman. Like I was able to compete at that level strength wise, but just how fast even the linemen were fast. And that was something that took a lot of getting used to, was just, man, everything is moving so much faster.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't even, like, I tried to run track in college and quickly was like, yeah, I'm not doing this because it doesn't equate. It doesn't move over from high school. I'm totally different. So that's cool
Yep.
to hear. And then like Canton itself is such a big football hub, obviously.
Yeah.
And then with the expo being there now and everything else,
Yep.
like being in that atmosphere growing up, like for somebody like I'm from Texas, so I've been around football my whole life too. So
Absolutely.
for people that haven't been around football, like just being around it, what was the experience growing up like with all of that around you?
Yeah, growing up in Northeast Ohio, it's a very dense football area. You know, Texas is that way as well. You have some other states that are very strong, but even some of the best states like California and Florida, they don't always have the same atmosphere. They have a lot of great athletes to choose from, but you have a few states that just they eat, sleep, breathe football. And Texas and Ohio are two of those states that just you grow like Massillon, Ohio, which is right next to Canton. When boys are born, they're given a football. Like every boy is given a football in the hospital. So like it's one of those things where it's just like so. And specifically in high school, and I grew up in a small town. It wasn't, I grew up outside of the Canton area, and I grew up in a small town, but still we would get 2,000, 2,500 people, which is like the extent of our entire town. It felt like was there, like things shut, like everything shut down. Everyone's there. We're all talking about what bonfire we're going to after the game's over. Like it was just the hub of social life is at the Friday night football game. And so it was just really cool. You know, I had some opportunities there where, you know, at one point we were 9-0. The team we were playing against was 9-0, and this would have been my sophomore year. And we were ranked number 4 in the state, and they were ranked number 2 in the state. And they were like big rivals of ours, and they had won the league title like 6 years in a row. And I mean, and this was truly a standing room only thing where, I mean, just the entire field was wrapped in, it didn't matter if there were stands or not. The entire field was just wrapped in people because everyone wanted to see if this juggernaut school would finally get taken down by this upstart school that was only, this was the first or second year that they had been successful. I mean, 5 years before that, we had gone 0-33, like 33 straight games without getting a win. So we were not known for football, but we had a transition that shifted and we ended up beating them. And it was like an incredible, like life change. Like I still have dreams. I literally still dream about that game and about high school football. So yeah, growing up in an area like Northeast Ohio is just, it's fun because if you're someone that enjoys football, you're going to fit in real well.
Yeah. Well, that's dope. Yeah. And to be able to have an experience with sports like that, like the high school football, the game, that just how you described it sounds awesome. And being from, like I said, being from Texas, yeah, everything shuts down. Traffic is crazy because everybody's trying to get to the stadium. Yeah.
Yep.
Totally feel you on that. But what about fantasy football? How did you stumble across that beast?
Yeah. So I remember trying to get into it in high school. And of course, we're high school kids and we don't really know what's going on. And we have no idea the scoring settings. It's just, what jersey looks the coolest. And, what's the big name. And fortunately, my first year playing, it would have been I want to say it was either my sophomore or junior year of high school, drafted a team. And my first round pick was Sean Alexander. And that was the year that he just went nuclear. And I forever I'll love Sean Alexander just because of what he did for my fantasy football team that first year. And by the end of the season, I think there were like 3 of us still paying attention. Most of us had did not care what happened after we drafted. And I know people can listen to this and relate. Like, I'm still in leagues like that. That sucks. But
yeah,
as a bunch of high school kids, it was fun. So so I started playing then, but I didn't get real serious into it until college. That's when I really started taking it seriously and really doing my homework and my research into who to draft, why I should be drafting them, who's these incoming rookies and things like that. And that was still a redraft up until my final year of college. It actually would have been right after I graduated college, was my first Dynasty season. And that changed everything for me at that point.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. And we'll get into that. Dynasty, though, is something that, I was a little hesitant to start playing. But once I started playing, it was like the most amazing thing I'd ever done. Like, it was crazy. When you first started playing Dynasty, like, how much of a transition did you have to make from playing redraft to Dynasty? Like, what was the kind of some of the things that you found to be a little harder or a little like,
Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, there weren't Dynasty rankings. Guys were showing up to the draft with redraft rankings, which is great to help you for this year. But I mean, long term, none of us really knew. We had no clue. And the group of guys that I did it with, we had about half of the league were experienced redraft players. They had played at least 2 or 3 seasons and really understood it. The other half, they were somewhat new to fantasy football just in general. We were just all good friends. We were all, went to Malone together and stuff. And this was kind of our way to try to stay in touch as we wanted to do this league. So that way we could stay in touch. And the cool part is, I'll say this now, we're going to be going into year 12 and it's still all the original 10 are all still there, which is really cool. And most years we still physically get together for the draft, which is really, really neat. So yeah, it was the first one was a little bit challenging as we just didn't even know what we didn't know. One guy's like, I'm drafting Brandon Whedon in round 3, no matter what. And he did, and it did not go well. But you'll have that.
Not at all. Well, live drafting is so much fun, just like being in that environment and everything. And I know not everybody that's listening has had the chance to actually participate in a live draft, but what is that experience like for you, getting to actually, put stickers on boards and, trash talk and all of that jazz?
Oh, look, I know it's not a possibility for everyone. But if you even have the remote, even if it's not with your closest friends and stuff, you're like, most of my closest friends don't care about football. Okay.
Right.
People from your work or kids on your, or people on your kids' baseball teams, their parents or whatever, like find enough people to, even if it's just an 8-person draft. Like, I know it's not an ideal size for a league, but the experience of getting to do it together is just so rewarding. It's so much fun because a buddy of yours is ultimately gonna mispronounce a name, and you're gonna get to tease him and make fun of him because I remember a couple of my live drafts. The one guy seemingly couldn't get any name of a player he drafted correct. He tried to draft TJ Hushmanzada. Of course, that went terribly. He drafted Brent Selleck, and it was Brent Kalik that he kept calling him. And you have fun opportunities to poke fun at each other. You get to yell out of frustration when somebody picks a guy you wanted right in front of you. Yeah. You're eating pizza, you're smashing wings. It's such a fun opportunity to just get to hang out in a low pressure environment and just exist, because there's so many stressful things that go on in our lives. Like, there are so many things that, we're worrying about, whether it's family issues and bills and whatever it is. There's so many things going on in our lives that are just they take a lot of our energy and our stress. And those moments, it's an escape. It's an escape for the 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is that you draft those people, because you just get to be friends and you get to draft together and joke and enjoy some fun food, and it's great.
It is great. And the mispronunciation of names, like shout out Marissa, it's Julio, not Julio. Shout out Katrina, it's Pierre Garcon, not Garkin. But it's like
Yeah,
I know if you girls are listening, sorry. Anyway, have you
I
ever
love it.
have you ever been a person that's been in charge of running a live draft?
Yes, yes. And in fact, one of my dynasty leagues, I'm the commissioner of, and it's a different group of guys, but we get together and we actually still like go to my parents' house and we do it because they have a pool and stuff. And so we all draft at my parents' house and stuff. So yeah, it's a good time. It's changed a little bit now because we all have the sleeper app. So we just like draft from our phones and stuff.
Yeah.
So you lose a little bit of that aspect of it, but still we have a good old time and getting to hang out and spend time together.
And so if somebody wants to do a live draft, wants to put one on, what's like a piece of advice that you would have for them when they first get started doing that?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. One, find creative ways to make it exciting. Just getting together is enough, but anytime you can add like something little, something fun to add a twist. So maybe it's to decide the draft order, you're going to make them do something ridiculous, or hey, everyone bring your favorite pizza. And we have a pizza taste test of our favorite pizzas while we're there, or something that I've liked to do. I'll do like what I call a secret player draft, and I'll pick up 2 or 3 autograph photos of players, but I won't tell anyone who they are. And so if you get lucky and draft that player, you get the autograph picture to go with it. So just like little fun things to just add in there. It makes it a fun time for everyone. And it's good talking points for later on. Like, okay, we did this last year, but this year, let's maybe do X, Y, Z. So I think that's a small thing that you can kind of add in, especially now that we don't have like the physical draft boards and stuff, little things that you can add in to kind of make it more personal.
Yeah, I'm taking notes because we need something to jazz up our live draft. So yeah, I like that, and I love pizza. So we're doing that. We're doing that this
There you
year.
go.
All
Done
right,
and
y'all
done.
heard it here first. All right, so let's go. Let's talk a little more about like Dynasty. When you play Dynasty, what kind of leagues are you most likely to be in? Like, are there certain settings or roster sizes or any quirks that you really like? What kind of leagues do you like to be in?
I've kind of gotten to the point now where most of the leagues that I get into, I want to do something slightly different than what I've done before. It doesn't have to be a big, huge addition or a big, huge change, but I want to do something slightly different. So if it's fair, like if it's a league I really want to be in, but the rules or the settings are fairly vanilla, okay, well then this time I'm trying a very different draft strategy than I've done before because I want to see how it plays out and how it works out. Sometimes it kind of clues me in that maybe I like this strategy a little bit more than I thought, or maybe this is a variant of a strategy I was doing, but I kind of like this a little bit better. Or sometimes the opposite happens. You're like, oh my gosh, I hate my team. This is terrible. I want to keep. That happens too. But I like to mix things up. In a perfect world for me, I love there to be a small Devy component to it because I do enjoy the scouting process of going from college to the NFL. That's one of my favorite parts of Dynasty in general. And I love the NFL draft. So that's always a big thing for me is I love that it doesn't have to be a lot of guys, maybe 3 guys or something like that. We're not figuring out who the middle linebacker is for Tennessee State. Like I don't care. But guys that are actually going to be relevant for your dynasty teams. I think that's fun. Being a year or 2 early on those guys, I enjoy that.
Yeah. And then putting out content, just how did you figure out you could put out fantasy football content? How did that come about?
Yeah, so it's as you mentioned, Dynasty Nerds is a fairly large brand in the dynasty space. It's been around for a long time. It's one of the OGs of Dynasty, and specifically in podcast form. It was one of the first, and most people you talk to, if they've been doing it for an extended period of time, most people say Dynasty Nerds was the first podcast I listened to for Dynasty Fantasy Football.
Yep.
And so I was one of those people. I was listening to the Dynasty Nerd show with Rich and Matt. Really, really enjoyed it. And one of their shows, they're like, hey, we are looking for writers. And I was like, cool. I'm college educated. I'm sure I could come up with something semi-coherent. So I did a little piece, sent it in. they said, "Hey, this doesn't suck. Would you like to write for us?" I was like, "Yes, I would. I would like to write for you guys. This will be great." And the reason I even did it was my buddy, who was actually the pastor of our church, and he's in that original league that I was talking about. Him and I were talking, and he was like, "Hey," because I would always do these little write-ups for our league each week. I would do a little write-up on, this team's playing this team. This guy sucks, but this guy's pretty good and has a good matchup. And just those generic things, 2 or 3 paragraphs, nothing crazy for each matchup. And he comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, Garret, those are pretty good. Those little write-ups you do. Maybe you should do them for people that actually care." I was like, thank you. I don't know if that was a compliment or not. I don't know how to take compliment. That. Yes, exactly. But him and I, we always bust balls and stuff like that. Yep. So it was fun hearing that from him. But so that was kind of that extra little thing to make me say like, okay, I'll try this. So I was writing for a while, and I had been listening for over a year. And during that time, I kind of forgot that Rich and Matt were also from Northeast Ohio. I had kind of forgotten about that aspect of it. And I'm talking with Rich one day, and he was like, "Hey, at some point, why don't you come up and do a guest spot on the show?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, yes, that would be amazing. I would love to do that." So I do a guest spot on the show, and similar to the writing, they were like, "Hey, you didn't suck." And I was like, "Thank you. I appreciate that." And they're like, would you want to do this a little more regularly?" I was like, "I absolutely would." So it was about an hour, 15-minute drive for me. So it was a little bit of a haul, but it was worth it. And that would have been almost 6 years ago now. So it's been a long time now. During that process, I moved from near Canton to Columbus. So now every time I go up, now we do it remote sometimes too, but every time I go up, it's 2 hours and 40 minutes each way. So it's a little bit of a haul, but it's worth it. I love doing it.
Yeah. I mean, it has to be worth it to drive that much, but yeah. I would drive that much for something that I love. So super cool to hear that. And had you ever done any podcasting before you joined the show, or was that your first experience doing something like that?
It was actually my first experience doing any podcasting. Now, my background, when I was at Malone University and doing football and stuff, my degree was in youth and sports ministry, and it was part of the theology program. So I had participated in a lot of public speaking things, preaching and teaching. So I was comfortable talking in front of groups of people, but I had never participated in a radio show or a podcast or anything like that. So I was new to that aspect of it, but I was fairly comfortable with the public speaking aspect, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. A lot of people say that, like I was a teacher, and so I was able to, so like, yeah, it's cool that you can take from your background to make it relevant for what you're doing now. And I watched a video earlier today. I was kind of trying to do a little research, quote unquote research, but I was watching one of the YouTube videos, Dynasty Nerds, and it was you with your 2 daughters doing fantasy. You guys were talking. Yeah, it was great. I
forgot I even did that. That's amazing.
It like totally was one of the first videos that popped up, and I was like, I want to check this out. And it was so cute, and it was so great. What made you decide to do that? I know you like, oh crap, I forgot, but like
I did
bringing your daughters in and having them. It was so cute and so funny. And if you haven't seen it, go see it. But yeah, do you remember what brought that about?
Yeah. So my girls they would always see my equipment, and they always are like, "Dad, we want to be on YouTube too." And so they always talk, because we let them watch YouTube Kids and little things like that, and like, we really want to be on YouTube too. And I was like, "Well, what, you guys want to do a video with me sometime?" They're like, "Can we?" I was like, "Yeah, we'll do a video together." And so I put together I prepared a few things ahead of time, some talking points and some pictures they could look at and things like that. And oh man, it was, I'm going to go back and actually watch that after I'm done with this, because that was probably, I'm guessing 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
3 years ago it said on there. Yeah, something like that.
Okay. That makes sense. So yeah, it's been a little bit for me, but that I'm really glad you brought that up, because yeah, I'm gonna go watch that again and then probably cry a little bit because my girls aren't aren't little
Not
anymore.
that little anymore. Yeah, it's great to have that too as a memory. Like you could show them, in the
Yeah.
future when they're talking about Tom Brady's growling, grimacy face and all this other stuff. Yeah, it was great. Anyway,
Oh.
just go check that out after you listen to this episode. Hey everyone, Kacey Kasem here. I want to take a moment to tell you about Sunday Dreamers Club, my fantasy football inspired t-shirt store. If you're looking for unique, stylish, and comfortable apparel that showcases your love for fantasy football, look no further than SundayDreamersClub.com. Whether you're gearing up for the next big game, hosting a draft party, or just want to sport some awesome gear, Sunday Dreamers Club has got you covered. With a variety of designs and styles to choose from, there's something for every fantasy football fan out there. Your support means the world to me, and there are so many ways you can help me grow this new small business. Grab a shirt or two for yourself or as a gift for your fantasy football league mates, or you can spread the word to your friends and family. Every bit helps, and I truly appreciate your support. Thanks for listening, and now let's get back to the show. Anyway, back to, but yeah, that's great. And so being like a dad and having, daughters and all that, as a person who's obviously not a dad and doesn't have any daughters, like what is being a dad like for you?
I love being a dad. Now, don't get me wrong. There are days that I want to like drop kick them into next week, but overall, I love being a dad. Like we have so much fun. They are two very different girls. They have very different interests, very different personalities. But that was something from the beginning that my wife and I talked about is we really want to let them pursue what they're excited about. Even though my wife and I both came from sports backgrounds, if they wanted to be in music, awesome. If they wanted to be into art, awesome. If they like whatever they wanted to do, as long as they were excited about it and they were passionate about it, like we wanted to do the best we could to be their biggest cheerleaders and help get them to where they want to be. Now they've got to, put in the work and time on their own. We can't do it for them, but we want to give them those opportunities. So my oldest daughter, Amelia, she's much more into sports. So she loves volleyball and basketball, and she's very tall. And so that's obviously a help for her. But she also, she loves superheroes, like love superheroes. Her and I, during the probably right around the age that you were going to see in that video, her and I sat down and during COVID and watched the entire Marvel universe from beginning to where it was at that point. And so now even anytime a new Marvel movie comes out, even if I don't think it looks any good, her and I, we get tickets and we go see it. So like that's something that we get to like really bond over, and it's super fun. And my youngest daughter, Penelope, she's a little spitfire. My oldest one, she's America's sweetheart. My youngest one is like, look, you're either going to be an amazing like civil leader someday, or you're going to be the next dictator. I'm not sure which. We just pray constantly that you make good decisions and lead people in the right way, because she's just got this natural charisma about her. She loves like cheering and gymnastics, things like that. We have like a little balance beam and a bar here. She's constantly doing flips on it and constantly, doing all these things on a balance beam and cartwheels off of it into this. And she's so excited about it, passionate, always wants to watch. Like she's so excited for the Olympics. She's excited to always watch different, girls and things like that do all their gymnastic stuff. So we always have YouTube up and she's watching different people do it. And it's like, I can't believe at such a young age how seriously she takes it. She's only 7. She just turned 7, 6 into 7. So she's still very young, but she just takes it so seriously and she really, really enjoys it. So it's just fun to see both of their personalities and what they like and what they enjoy. And it can be an exhausting job being a dad or just a parent in general. But it's super rewarding.
That's awesome. And the names, they have great names. I just wanted to let you know, shout out to the
Thank you.
names. They're so good. So
I appreciate it. That was one of those things where we didn't want to be super common normal names, but we also didn't want them to be like weird. Like, what does that even mean?
yeah.
Or why did you name them that? So we decided to go with more of like the old school route, like the old school names. And so that's where we came up with Amelia and Penelope.
That's awesome. And your wife, I'm sure, has been very supportive during your journey into the fantasy football industry and full time and all of that. how has having her on this journey been for you?
She's a rock star. Like she's so cool. She's so much cooler than I am. I have been so blessed. That's people ask me about all kinds of things, and one of the things they'll ask me about is my marriage and things like that. And I always make this comment, and it's because I truly believe it. It's not like something I say like flowery and just like, oh, like I say it because it's the right thing, but one, like we truly are best friends. Like I look for, like, even if we're doing like awesome fun things with Dynasty Nerds and I'm going to the combine or whatever, like things that I like genuinely enjoy, I look forward to coming home and getting to be with her because I miss her and I want to spend time with her, and truly, out of everything, I'm probably the most proud of my marriage. Like of anything I've done, of anything I've accomplished, that's the thing I have the most pride in. And so it's so cool to have somebody that is as beautiful and intelligent as she is, uh, be willing to, because when I first started doing this, wasn't making any money. It was just kind of a side thing that I would do when the girls went to bed and that kind of stuff. And then, started making a little bit, and now it's my full-time gig, so it's crazy to see how it went from one place to another. But she was always so supportive during the whole time. As much as she loves Dynasty Nerds, she hates Tuesdays because she does not like being at home by herself when
Yeah.
it's like night out. She's like, I can't tell you how many calls I've gotten like, Garret, someone broke in for sure. Someone's definitely in her house. Never has there been anyone in her house, but so many times she is convinced that someone's there. So we just recently got a dog to kind of help assure her and help with that kind of stuff. But yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, I always like to give the shout outs to the partners, the spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever, like being by our sides and helping us get through, the hard times and the good times, and sharing this journey together. So that's awesome to hear. And I know that faith is important to you as well. You were talking
Mhm.
about how you went to school for youth and sports ministry. Is that something that you'd probably be doing if you weren't doing this now, and how do you incorporate that into your life now?
Yeah. So it's my wife and I, we have a hard time sitting still. We tend to be busybodies a little bit. And so we are actually she does a lot as far as the hours go. But we are actually both we work for our church as well in the area, and we run the children's ministry. And so we get to hang out with basically birth through fifth grade, and that's our domain. And so we get to hang out with these kids, put on different events, different conferences, parenting conferences, just all kinds of stuff. And it's so cool to see how God works and moves in these kids' lives. And so many of them, they're just looking for an adult to say, hey, I see you, I think you're awesome, and like let me know when your baseball game is, or let's talk about what you saw on Bluey last week, or whatever. Like they just want someone to care.
Right.
And there's plenty of them that come from great homes and stuff like that, but still you want somebody other than your parents to be pouring into you. You need some of those external sources. But there's so many that don't have great home lives too, that are especially in need of just some positive affirmation in their life. And so it's cool to get to be a part of that and say, hey, look, God loves you, and we really do too. And we're so glad that you're here and getting to hang out with us. We know you're not perfect. We know you mess up and make mistakes, and you can be a knucklehead sometimes, and so can we. We all fall short. But we still love you, and we're glad you're here.
And that's cool. And that age group too, I'm sure is pretty fun to be around. You know, um,
Oh yeah.
up to third grade. Yeah.
Oh, the amount of ridiculous things these kids will say on a regular basis, it's hilarious. The stories that they'll tell, man, like we were playing a game a couple weeks ago where you had to I tricked them into it being like a public speaking game. They didn't realize it, but they got to come up to the stage, and this is the first through fifth graders. They got to come up to the stage, and they could talk about anything they wanted for a minute straight. anything they wanted, but they lose a point every time they say or anything like that. So they had to try to go a minute straight talking about anything they wanted, but they couldn't use those like grammatical pauses. And it was hilarious. Some of the topics and some of the things that these kids would come up with. The one girl, she's like, I'm going to talk about elephants. And she talked a minute straight about elephants. The next kid comes up, he's like, I'm going to talk about Ninjago. And so he talks about Ninjago for a minute straight. And just some of the things that they would say were adorable and cute. And yeah, so it's super fulfilling. I genuinely enjoy it, but it's crazy because it's very different than the experience that I had before. So when I first started working with Dynasty Nerds, I was working at a church in downtown Canton. And if you've been, like, there's the cute, quaint part of downtown Canton, and then there's like the rough part of downtown Canton. And there we actually helped plant a church there, and we had a facility that we had open all week. And basically what it was for was kids could come in after school, play basketball. We would feed them, and we would share like a devotion at some point. And it was heartbreaking at times because there were so many of these kids that just came from just really, really tough backgrounds, really, really tough homes. One time we put out a survey, and it wasn't mandatory. Anybody that wanted to fill it out could fill it out. But we had about 40 kids fill out the survey. And one of the questions was, how many of you have both of your biological parents in the home? And we didn't have a single kid that had both of their biological parents in the home. And so that was the tough part, is most of these kids were, their parents were locked up, separated, and for whatever various reasons. But we're also talking about very low socioeconomic status and just not enough meals to eat. And so there was just a lot of these stories that would just absolutely break your heart. And so doing ministry in that context versus the context that we're in now, which is a much more suburban type area, it's very different ministry. But God is still good in both places. God still works and moves in both places. But it was a very different setting to be in, because I would hoop with these kids, and I'll tell you what, like, I got dunked on more times than I would like to admit. I mean, these kids would just rise up and just yam it right in my face. It was really, really impressive. But yeah, so it's cool to just see, similar context, but just completely different settings of what we were doing. So it was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. And yeah, that sounds very fulfilling and very, like, I'm sure those kids appreciate everything that you've done for them. Like, especially letting them dunk over you. I'm sure they were really happy that they got to do that. So
I let them do it. Yeah.
you let them.
I could have blocked them.
You could have blocked them.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. You got to let them every now and then. You got to let them win every now and then. So, okay, going into like the expo, the Fantasy Football Expo is a big part of the space now. And I know that Dynasty Nerds has a big presence with the expo. How has your experience been with that? And how has Dynasty Nerds been a part of the expo?
Yeah, I remember year one when it first started up, and I'd been at Dynasty Nerds for a little over a year, right around a year, something like that. And Rich was like, hey, they're doing like this fantasy football thing in Canton. And I was like, I live in Canton. He's like, yeah, I know. We should like put a booth up. And I was like, that would be cool. Let's do it. So we put a booth up, and that first year it was so small. I mean, there were, I think, like 25 guests that weren't like people with booths and stuff like that. But it was still so cool because we got to meet so many people that we hadn't met before, that we had seen on Twitter, that we had interacted with, but we had never gotten to really talk with face to face. So we got to meet a lot of people. And then obviously the year, I think that was 2019. And then 2020 COVID happened. So we didn't have the expo that year. And then it's been 21, 22, 23 that we've done it since. And it's a great time. It's so cool to get to interact and see all of these people, get to talk to people that listen to the show and want to ask about certain episodes and that kind of stuff. It's so much fun. So yeah, it's something I look forward to every year.
Yeah, I mean, and like the Nerd Herd being a part of your fan base, you guys actually it's cool to be able to interact with people that take in your content and enjoy your content. It's like, how important has it been growing this audience and like sharing this journey with them as well?
Yeah, it's been really, really cool. It's crazy because I think when you podcast, I think it's easy to kind of forget that there's people on the other side listening to this sometimes, because you're not talking to a group of people. It's not a room full of, like, you're by yourself or with a couple other people in a room, and you're just talking just like you and I are right now. But yet there's going to be so many people that listen to this. And I at least, maybe other people don't, but I forget that all the time, that there's like people on the other side of this listening and whatnot. And so when you have people come up to you, like I was at Top Golf. This would have been probably 2 years ago. I was at Top Golf and I wore a Dynasty Nerds shirt. And our person that worked at our bay, I don't know if they're called waitresses or what, but you know what I mean? Like the person that's working there that helps you set up and get your food and stuff. She's like, "Oh, Dynasty Nerds, I love that podcast." She's like, "I actually, I aren't they doing like a t-shirt giveaway right now?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think they are. I think they're doing a t-shirt giveaway." And I said nothing. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I love listening to that podcast. I think it's a really good show, and all this stuff. That's crazy that you listen to." And I was like, "Yep, I do." And I didn't say anything. And eventually, like, my wife's like, "You should probably tell her that that's you." And I was like, no, like, just, I don't want to embarrass her or anything like that. And she's like, "Just say something. I think she would think it was fun." So I said something, and she was like, "I thought your voice sounded familiar."
Right? Yeah.
Clearly she does not watch the YouTube. She only listens. But yeah, it was fun to get to kind of just interact and talk with her and stuff like that. And there have been a couple other little things like that. So it's weird. It is weird when people like come up to you, and whether it's at the expo or other places, and they're like, I do know you, right? I've seen you. What's it from? That kind of stuff. It's always kind of fun.
That only happened to me one time, and the person didn't come up and say hi to me, and they were like, "Well, I didn't want to like bother you while you were with your friends when I was at a local brewery." I was like,
So they
"Dude, you
messaged
should
you later?
yeah, message me later." I forget if this was years and
Ah,
years and years ago, but they I mean, I don't know. I guess I had my hat on and glasses, so they were like, "Oh, I know her."
sure.
But yeah, that is really cool, and to see the brand of Dynasty Nerds grow and grow and grow, like you were saying, some people's first Dynasty podcast to listen to. Mine too. I was listening to Dynasty Nerds before I was even playing Dynasty. I was just listening to it as a redraft, and then
Sure.
so it kind of helped me decide, yeah, okay, let's take the dive and actually play Dynasty. So yeah.
Yeah.
And the logo is super awesome. Like you guys have it down perfect. So
No, I
just want to let
appreciate
you
it.
know
I appreciate it. Yeah, we have fun with it. The brand's been around longer than I have. It's been the podcast has been out over 10 years now. Like I said, I've been a part of it for about 6 of those 10 years. So I can't take credit for the inception in the beginning. That was all Matt, Rich, and Josh. But I'm glad they did, and I'm glad I got to
yeah.
be a part of it and help get it to where it is today. It still cracks me up that people are like, "Yes, we want to pay for you to talk to us about football." Like, that still is just does not make sense to me. It's wild. I'm so grateful and thankful that it is the case, but it still just blows my mind that I've been given this opportunity to get to talk about football for a living. It's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. Like it is like the super coolest thing ever to be able, especially to be able to do things that you love. Like that's so awesome to see how that's worked for you. And you're also part owner of Dynasty Nerds too. Is that right?
That is
Yeah.
correct. Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Which is very gracious on their part, because there were 3 guys that established it. Like I mentioned, Rich and Matt, which everyone will recognize those names. Josh is more of behind the scenes, does a lot with the website and that kind of stuff. So they were the 3 guys that started it. And then I came along, and then Jared Wackerly as well. And so the 5 of us are the owners of Dynasty Nerds. And it's a great group of guys. And I'm very, very blessed to get to work with them.
Yeah, it really is a great group of people over there, and, like, definitely go check out Dynasty Nerds if you haven't. I don't know why you haven't, but you should, so go do that. Um, well, let's talk a little more about, like, just fantasy, but not just fantasy, football in general. Would you were talking about how you like the draft and how you're big into the draft, like, how was this experience with this last draft? How did you watch it, or how do you usually watch it? What's the vibe like?
Yeah, I've been a big fan of the draft for a long time, and as a, I think most fans of teams that are just perennially just terrible tend to like the draft a little bit more than others. There's a reason the movie Draft Day was done with the Cleveland Browns, because for the Browns, it was always our Super Bowl. Like, we were terrible every year, but that was the one time of year where it felt like there was hope. You know, this could be the year that's different because of this guy that we took, or this guy we drafted, or this guy we traded for. So that was the one time of year where it really felt like things were different and going in the right direction. But this year specifically, this was year, is this year 2 or 3? I think this is year 2, where we've changed up what we've done with Dynasty Nerds, and we have made our annual leaders meeting. So it's the 5 of us owners and then about 5 or 6 other guys that are kind of key leaders in what we do at Dynasty Nerds. And we go to this cabin in New York. Rich owns the cabin and uses it as like an Airbnb. And we go to the cabin for the weekend and we just hang out, watch the draft, have a good time, joke around, produce some content while we're there. But we also have a lot of our big meetings for the year on what we're planning for the future, what tools are we doing, what kind of things do we need to be doing with branding and marketing and all of that kind of stuff. All of our big meetings tend to really come together over that weekend.
And then when you go into watching football, because I know you like to watch film and but watching an actual game with you, how is that experience? What are you like on game day?
I'm that's a great question. I should probably ask my wife, like, what am I like on game day? Because she can kind of tell how things are going, based on my personality in that moment, probably my emotions in that moment, whether I'm very jovial or if I'm a little more doom and gloom, how much I'm yelling at the TV or not. But actually, at the Super Bowl, I had a few friends over, and their spouses were here and whatnot too. And it was funny as the guys were all watching football and the game, and we're cheering, and we have our certain bets and all that kind of stuff that we have going on and whatnot. The wives were apparently playing bingo. They were playing bingo with all of the things that we did, and they were keeping track of, like, so and so yells at the TV, so and so spills their dip on their shirt, so and so, like, all that stuff. They had this like whole bingo board of like who could get all of the correct things first and whatnot. So it was pretty funny, but yeah, I wouldn't say I'm the most boisterous, loud fan ever, but if I'm not happy, you'll definitely know about it.
That's an awesome idea though with the bingo. I like that. Get everybody involved. So that's cool.
Exactly.
But yeah.
Exactly.
So okay, when it comes to the Browns right now, is there a favorite player that you have on the team? Is there somebody in particular that you're a big fan of?
Nick Chubb, hands down. Nick
Nick
Chubb,
Haynes, yeah.
I've I love like the way he conducts himself. Like, you never hear about Nick Chubb. He's never upset. He's never dissatisfied. Like, he has such a workman's mentality, which is so
Mhm.
rare in football today because so many guys are, and it's fun. It's part of what makes football fun. But they're showboats and they're loud and they're worrying about their endorsements and they're all of these things. Nick Chubb doesn't care about any of that. He's there to do his job, and he's going to work his tail off and do it as hard as he can. And he's going to be a great teammate. Like, I remember when he had this just terrible injury this year, and I was literally, it felt like I had lost a friend, like, which sounds
Mm,
so dramatic. I know that sounds so dramatic, but literally in that moment when I saw this gruesome knee injury, I'm like, first of all, he's such a big key to this offense. Like, I don't think we can get as far as we need to without him. I
right.
don't think we can. And it was shown. I mean, we lost in the first round of the playoffs. So that was part of it. Two, it couldn't have happened to a better guy. I mean, just genuinely a good dude. And I remember hearing all of these comments of other players like, there's not anyone in the league that doesn't like Nick Chubb. Like everyone likes Nick Chubb. And so I think there was just a general sense of like sadness around it happening. But 3, I started thinking about, did this guy before this injury potentially have a shot at the Hall of Fame? And is this going to wreck his chances at that because of how bad this injury is? And, running backs, any lost time is tough. And especially with an injury like that. So that was a tough day for me. But yes, I've always really appreciated Nick Chubb. I think he's one of the best pure running backs that I've seen in my time doing this. He's so talented. I get it. He's not the best pass catcher in the world, but when you're looking at a guy between the tackles, there's not many better in the past decade or so.
Yeah, I like Nick Chubb. I feel like he doesn't get talked about as much as some guys, and like he kind of gets off my radar because he's not the guy that's always being talked about. But like you said, he's a nice, humble dude that, everybody likes. So there you go.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
You brought up Draft Day, the movie as well. As a person who's never seen the film, I always get crap.
Wow.
I always get crap for it, like always. Yeah. But you brought up the Browns and everything with that. When you saw it for the first time, what were your thoughts on that film?
So I'm not going to blame you at all for not watching it because it's actually not that great of a movie.
Well, like as much
as it's really not. Like it's fine. It's fine, but like if you don't have an emotional attachment to it, there's no reason to prioritize it. Now, I watch it every year on Draft Day. Like I watch it or the day before. Like I watch it every year. Partly because it's the Browns, partly because I love the draft. But I remember going to the movie theater to see it because something's going to highlight the Browns in a non-negative way for once. Like I've got to be a part of this. I've got to see what's going on here. And I love Kevin Costner and he does a great job in the film and whatnot. But yeah, the film itself is extremely mid. And that might even be generous. But it's for people that love, even though there's a lot that's fictionalized, for people that love the nuance of being a general manager and the process and thoughts into how to utilize draft capital and how to build a team and how to like all of that kind, like if you're into those nitty-gritty details of kinds of things, like it's just fun because you get to see it kind of played out. That's why I love all of those moments where they give you a glimpse into the war room for 3 minutes before they draft a certain player. Like I love all of those little details of things and just seeing what that life is like, because let's be honest, most people that play Dynasty specifically will say that one of the potential dream jobs they would have would be to be an NFL GM. Like that's what we want. That's basically what we're trying to emulate by playing Dynasty fantasy football, is we're trying to say, hey, if I don't get to redraft my team every year and I'm stuck with the people I drafted, how do I build a champion? Is it through the draft? Is it through trading? Is it like, what do I do? How do I capitalize on older veterans versus youth? And, all of these things that we assume that NFL GMs are doing, that's what we're trying to do. And that's what we're trying to do on a much smaller scale. So I think for people that are really into Dynasty, even though the storyline and the acting is kind of like, it is what it is, it's still a very fun experience because it's a fictionalized picture of what we assume that would be like.
I've watched a lot of mid films in my life, so I think I can add one more to the list. So next weekend when we're trying to figure out what to watch, then I'm just going to try to find that and put it on because I really do need to watch it. I love the draft too. I don't watch college football, but the draft, there's something about the draft that just like every year I just have to watch it with a bunch of people and just enjoy what's going on. So totally. So, okay, what do you like to do in your free time? I know when I ask that question, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't have free time. But what do you like to do when you do have free time?
It's true. Yeah, free time can be in short supply. But there's a few things I like to do in my free time. I do enjoy golfing. I wouldn't say I'm very good at it, but I do enjoy playing golf and getting into that. I also on my so I have almost like a split personality in a way. That's going to sound way more dramatic than I mean for it. But I have my my jock side where growing up, I would, I played all the sports and I did all the things, but then I also have like my random other side. So like I was the guy in high school that I would be wearing my Letterman jacket at an outdoor metal concert. And like it just like these things don't seemingly go together, but they did for me. And so like here I am in the middle of this mosh pit wearing a Letterman jacket, the only one without like piercings and tats and whatnot, but I'm having just as good of a time as everybody else there. And so even now, like I love board games. Like I love board games. And especially like I'm getting into like even like the nerdier and nerdier stuff. Like we play a game called Dark Souls, and it's based on this video game called Dark Souls, and you're doing this dungeon crawl and all this stuff. And basically, from what I understand, I'm basically a hop, skip, and a throw away from Dungeons and Dragons at this point. So I am, I love board games. Love going on vacations with the family. We took the girls to Disney last year and stuff like that. Anytime, especially with how quickly they grow up. I love to have those moments where there's just no distractions, nothing else that I need to be doing or getting done. It's just simply like, hey, what ice cream place are we going to go to? What putt course are we going to go to? What, like, just there's no distractions from what we need to be doing. So those would probably be the biggest things I would say.
That's awesome. I need to talk to my dad because, like, growing up, it was me and my sister, 2 years apart. Like, I know we were completely different people too, and we were. I need to ask him why he never took me to Disney. But hey, that's a question for another. I'm gonna call him tonight just to ask. But
Listen, Dad.
Listen, Dad. No, but it sounds really cool that you like make all these memories with your family, and it just sounds like you guys are such a close knit group. So that's really cool to see. And then you have your Dynasty Nerds family, which is also close knit. Like it's cool that you have all these awesome people around you. So
yeah, I'm more blessed than I deserve. Honestly, more blessed than I deserve. My wife and I, we come from close knit families that are super supportive and are willing to drive an hour to come watch a basketball game and a gymnastics meet and stuff. And they're involved in their lives. And in fact, next week the girls are going to be gone for a week at my mom's house and swimming all week, and they're going to do vacation Bible school and stuff. And so yeah, we are. I don't know what I did to deserve to be this blessed, but it's really cool.
That is really cool. And like that's just awesome. I don't know. That's what I have to say is that's just awesome. That's all I can say. But yeah, Garret, it has been a blast and a half having you on the show. Like such a great time, and getting to know more about you. It's been awesome too. I'm sure everybody that's listening feels the same way. Can you go ahead and just let everybody know where they can find you and where all your stuff is located?
Yeah. All of my work, all of my content is with Dynasty Nerds. So you can find me at dynastynerds.com, Dynasty Nerds podcast. We're always pumping out videos on YouTube and new tools and things like that. So there's always something going on over there. And yeah, that's where I hang out.
That's delightful. Awesome stuff right there. Go check out Dynasty Nerds for sure. Go watch the YouTube videos, especially the one that I was talking about earlier. And and go listen to Rich's episode as well. And come back next week for another episode of Get Real with Kacey Kasem. Remember to stay rad.
Get real. Time to get real, everybody.